Thanks for being with us here on Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Christina Evans. As promised before we went to that 2-minute break, our next story is going to be taking us to the Big Apple as day 2 of jury selection is currently underway there in New York City. Of course, this is for the music mogul, Sean Diddy Combs. We do know that he's now standing trial on sweeping federal charges involving sexual assault. Prosecutors allege that Combs often used force and coercion to get victims to engage in what he called freak-offs, which were often recorded and could last for several days. Again, day 2 of jury selection has officially wrapped. So we now want to bring into the conversation now legal analyst Nima Rahmani. Nima, thanks so much for being with us here on Live Now from Fox. We do know, again, this jury selection process is now heading into Wednesday. How much longer do we expect for this part of this process to continue?
Christina, I expect us to have a jury as soon as tomorrow, and if not, no later than Thursday. And this is why. Judge Subramanian, the judge in the case, is moving through the 4 cause challenges. Those are the jurors who are removed because they can't be fair and impartial. And after that's done, and the judge wanted about 45 jurors after that cause process was done, the parties are going to begin using their peremptory strikes. So those are strikes that the lawyers can use for any reason, as long as it's not a constitutionally prohibited reason like race or religion. But they have a limited number of strikes that aren't for cause. The defense has 10, for instance. So from that 45, and currently we're at 35, once we get to that magic number of 45, the parties will start using their strikes, and we're going to get down to those 12 jurors who will decide the case, plus 6 alternates in case any of those jurors have to be removed for some reason.
I'm glad you brought that up because, yes, by the end of those court proceedings today, 39 prospective jurors had faced questions, with 16 moving forward in the process, including 10 men and 6 women, altogether reaching that total of 35. What do you think about this current ratio, 10 men, 6 women? Is this surprising to you at all?
It's not surprising. We had more women in the pool yesterday of the 19. We had more men today. So it's starting to even out in terms of the racial composition. You know, obviously we're talking about sex crimes, and sex crimes affecting many women in the case. So, you know, obviously people bring their views on these types of cases, their outside experiences into that courtroom and that jury deliberation room. And sometimes folks think, well, you know, it's a case involving a man, a crime against a woman. Maybe Diddy wants the jury to be all male. Not necessarily, because sometimes in these types of cases, women actually tend to be more favorable for the defense and less accepting of a woman's account. Especially a more conservative juror might say, you know what, I would never put myself in that situation, going to a all-white party with a musician, even if it's a music mogul like Diddy. And they might ask themselves, well, what was this woman's intention when they went there? So I think both sides, whether it's men, whether it's women, they want jurors that are favorable to their case, and the sex isn't necessarily going to matter as much.
Is there anything else that the prosecution or the defense is particularly looking at when doing this jury selection, or, as you put it last week, deselection process, striking folks off of that list to make sure that the jurors that aren't favorable to each side don't end up on that jury of 12?
Christina, the reality is this is a celebrity case, and a rich and famous one at that. Sean Combs is one of the most famous entertainers in the entire world, and celebrities do well when they're put on trial. They do better than ordinary folks. So if you're the government here, the Department of Justice, you really want to make sure that you get any fans off that panel. That's got to be your number one goal. You want people that are going to decide the case solely based on the facts and evidence in the case. And we've seen it time and time again. I'm sitting here in Los Angeles, and it was a very weak case, but A$AP Rocky was acquitted out of a criminal trial, and it certainly helped that Rihanna was there in the gallery with her baby watching him. So I'm not saying that that's going to carry the day, but that's something you have to be aware of if you're one of the prosecutors in this case. You got to get those fans off the panel.
And what's even more interesting is that social media made into the courtroom today. We do know that the question was asked, I want to read it here, quote, have you communicated to others, posted your opinion on social media or online, or even liked any social media posts about Mr. Combs? If so, when and where did you post and state that opinion? How huge is that going to be already as well? I mean, folks like tweets all the time as they're just coming down their timeline. Maybe they even reposted something on their Instagram story just to get responses from others. Interesting to see that this question has now made it into the courtroom.
Absolutely. This is the world we live in. You know, social media is everything. Jurors and everyone, they get their views from social media. I'm sure this video will be on Live Now's YouTube page and the comments will be there. Some people will be pro Diddy and some will be against. So when you're the lawyers, you want to know where are people getting their news? And importantly, what are they saying about this case? One thing that makes this case different from all the others that people cover or jurors participate in is the jurors have seen some of the key evidence in the case, and that's that 2016 video of Diddy seemingly assaulting Cassie Ventura at a hotel here in Los Angeles. So those jurors are going to come into that courtroom with preconceived notions about the case. And even yesterday, there was a juror that said that, you know, they liked a comedian making jokes about the 1,000 bottles of baby oil. So whether it's a meme, whether it's a substantive discussion about the evidence in the case, everyone in the country and really the entire world knows about this case and has probably interacted with it already on social media. So that's what the lawyers and the high-paid jury consultants in this case want to find out. Have those jurors said anything about the case? Because it may be favorable or unfavorable, and that may guide their decision here.
And speaking of social media, I want to put up this tweet that we have there from legal affairs journalist Megan Cuniff. She put this out on her X account that prosecutors in the Sean Diddy Combs trial say that attorney Mark Geragos should be admonished and not able to speak to the press during this trial. Of course, we know that Geragos was there in court with Diddy yesterday, but has not formally at this point appeared in his case. Is this, quote, normal in this case that they're trying to stop an attorney from speaking to the media? Because honestly, I have to tell you, Neva, we look forward to getting those live feeds into our newsroom so we can play them out for the viewers. When those lawyers, they step up and speak to the mic, we're able to get just an inside perspective of what really is happening there in the courtroom.
One thing that makes this case unique is that it's being prosecuted in the Southern District of New York. And we've seen this in other cases, in the Mayor Eric Adams case, and the Luigi Mangione federal case that's there. The Southern District of New York has some pretty stringent local rules that prevents the lawyers in the case from making statements, extrajudicial statements, including statements to the media, that may affect or taint the jury pool. This is a direct rule that a lot of other jurisdictions don't have. So in those cases that I mentioned, for instance, the defense said, you know what, the prosecution is saying things that is tainting the jury pool, whether it's Pam Bondi, whether it's the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York. Here, Megan's one of the best. She's here in L.A. I know her well, and I know Mark Geragos as well. The issue in the case is the following. Geragos is there, but he hasn't filed a notice of appearance, so he's not officially on the case. I don't know if he's licensed in New York or he's going to be temporarily licensed on a pro hoc vice basis, which means just for this particular case, but he's not an official attorney in the case, so he's not necessarily bound by those local rules. I don't know if he's going to notice on and actually litigate this case, or maybe he's just there as a jury consultant for a non-legal purpose. But that's what the prosecution is taking issue with. They're saying, listen, if there's a lawyer who's on the case, he needs to file his appearance and really be on the case, not just be sitting there doing legal work when you're not bound by the court and its specific rules.
And Nima, this isn't the only change or even headline that's coming out as it has to do with his legal team, Sean Diddy Combs. Also another tweet that we have there from Megan Cuniff. Attorney Nicole Westmoreland, she is also going to be now joining his legal team. She's there of Westmoreland Law, LLC. She's the latest lawyer to join the team after filing a notice of attorney appearance with the court today. His defense team is already already, though, of course, led by those other attorneys, including Mark Agnifilo. Isn't it pretty late here in the game for him to still be adding lawyers to represent him and to be a part of that legal counsel that he has there, as the case is, again, already in the jury selection process?
It is later than you would expect, but again, it's not your typical case. You have a defendant who is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Before these allegations, he was reportedly worth $1 billion. So he is going to put together his version of a dream team, an all-star lineup. Brian Steele and Nicole Westmoreland, they did an outstanding job in Atlanta in that YSL Young Thug case. The Fulton County District Attorney, Fonnie Willis, really suffered a pretty bad defeat in that case. I think the case was botched for other reasons. So whether it's lawyers in Los Angeles, like Mark Garagos, in Atlanta, like Brian Steele, or in New York, like Mark Agnifilo, whose wife is also defending Luigi Mangione, Karen Agnifilo, Diddy is putting together who he thinks are the best and brightest lawyers. And let's not forget, lawyers have different roles. Some of